Tonight, we ask a question as old as humanity itself: are we born to hurt, or to heal? Two voices will face off, each holding a mirror to who we really are. Is violence in our blood, or is peace in our bones? Welcome to Moon Whispers. Let the debate begin.
Let's get one thing straight: if humans were naturally violent, we wouldn't have survived this long. We'd have wiped each other out centuries ago. But we didn't. We built families, languages, art, music, and trust. That doesn't happen. In a species driven by bloodlust, yes, we fight sometimes. But what do we do most of the time? We live. We love. We help. That's not weakness, it's our true nature. Violence is loud, but peace is constant. Think about that. Let me take you back to where this all begins: birth. When a child is born, they're not born with a sword in their hand. They're born reaching out for love. Crying, yes, but not attacking. What do babies crave? Warmth. Touch. Safety. Not war. No conflict. If violence were natural, we'd see it from the very first breath. But instead, we see a connection, and connection is everywhere. We are wired to live in groups, tribes, villages, families, teams. We depend on each other. We can't even survive alone for long. Our eyes look into each other's faces, searching for trust. That's what keeps society running. You think the world works because we're always ready to fight? No. It works because we're trying not to fight. Every moment, every day, people are choosing peace over conflict over and over. Again, let me show you how deep this runs. Look at empathy. If someone falls in the street, most people rush to help. Not to rob. Not to hurt. To help. That's not something we have to be taught. It's something we feel in our bones. If someone cries, we feel something inside twist. If someone laughs, we smile without meaning to. That's not violence. That's being human. Even in history, yes, there were wars. But you know what's almost always bigger than war? The healing that comes after. Rebuilding. Forgiving. Peace talks. Treaties. Movements. That rise up to say, no more. People risk their lives to stop violence. Whole generations say, we want better. That doesn't come from a violent heart. That comes from something softer, braver, and deeply human. Now let's talk science. Everyone loves to bring up chimpanzees when they want to prove humans are violent. But they always forget about the bonobos. Bonobos are just as closely related to us as chimps, but they live completely differently. They don't fight for dominance the way chimps do. They solve conflict. Through bonding, through touch, through care. They literally choose peace, and we share almost all of their DNA. So if we're going to look at animal behavior to figure out who we are, we have to include both. And guess what? Bonobos suggest that peace is just as natural, if not more. Let's get real for a second. When was the last time you saw a riot? Maybe on the news? On social media? Now, when was the last time you saw a neighbor help another neighbor? A teacher guides a student? A child hugs a parent? You see those things every day, but they don't make headlines. Why? Because peace is so normal, we don't notice it, but violence? That shocks us. That's why it's news. If violence were truly natural, we wouldn't blink when it happens. But we do blink. We flinch. We hurt. We say, this isn't right. That reaction tells us something important. Deep down, we know violence goes against our nature, and I'm not saying humans are perfect. We can be selfish, scared, or even cruel. But that's not because we're violent at our core. It's because we're complicated. Life pushes us. Circumstances break us. But the fact that we have to be pushed to violence shows it's not our default setting. It's the exception, not the rule. Now, people love to say, look at history, it's full of war. Sure. But guess what? History is also full of peace. It just doesn't get the same spotlight. Every single day that people go to work, take care of children, feed the hungry, or help a stranger is a day that proves humans are builders, not destroyers. You want real proof? Look around right now, someone is saving a life in a hospital. Right now, a volunteer is delivering food to someone in need. Right now, a teacher is shaping a child's future. Right now, millions of people are simply choosing not to hurt each other just to live side by side. That's not weakness. That's power. That's humanity. We've made mistakes. We've hurt each other. But we also forgive. We grow. We reach across battle lines and broken bridges and say, let's try again. That isn't something a naturally violent species does. That's something a hopeful species does. That's us. So yes, humans can be violent. But that's not the question here. The question is, are we naturally violent? And my answer is no. We're naturally peaceful, but sometimes we forget. We're born to connect, but sometimes we break. What matters is not the anger we're capable of, but the peace we keep choosing. Violence may be in our past, but peace is in our potential, and I believe we are far more than the worst things we've done.
If humans were naturally peaceful, the world wouldn't look like this. That we wouldn't need prisons. We wouldn't need armies. We wouldn't need locks on our doors. But we do, because deep down, we know the truth. We are dangerous. We are violent. And pretending otherwise is just self-comfort dressed as hope. Think I'm wrong? Look around. From the moment we walk the earth, we've killed to survive, hunted animals, fought over land, even slaughtered our own kind. And it's not just history books, it's in our bones. Literally. In Kenya, archaeologists found a group of ancient humans from 10,000 years ago murdered, bashed in skulls, arrowheads in their ribs. Whole families wiped out. No cities. No politics. Just raw, human brutality. That wasn't taught. That was instinct. You see, people love to talk about how kind humans can be. But what they don't want to face is how violent we already are. How we snap when we're angry. How we lash out when we feel disrespected. How quickly a calm man can become a killer if you push the right button. That we are not bonobos sitting in trees, singing kumbaya. We are primates with rage in our DNA. Even children show it. Ever seen a toddler bite another for a toy? No one taught them that. It just happens. Why? Because under pressure, we go back to our default. Attack, defend, win. You think that's extreme? Ask yourself this. Why do we love war movies, crime shows, boxing matches, and first-person shooters? We don't just tolerate violence. We enjoy it. We're drawn to it. It excites us. Because part of us, whether we admit it or not, thrives on it. Now, I'm not saying all people are evil. I'm saying we carry darkness inside us, whether we like it or not. And that darkness doesn't just pop up in bad times. It lives with us. That's why we need laws, rules, police, and religion to control us. Not because we're naturally peaceful, but because without them, things fall apart. Look at the world right now. Wars rage. Countries invade. Neighbors riot. People shoot over parking spaces, stab over insults. Genocide. Domestic violence. Terror. And yes, some people are kind. Some are even saints. But they are the exception. The truth? Violence is not a glitch in the system. Violence is the system. It's how humans gain power, protect what's theirs, and take what isn't. Even in relationships, how many hurt each other with words, with fists, with silence? You don't need a war to see human violence. Sometimes it's right at the dinner table. And history? Don't even get me started. Every empire ever built, Rome, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, colonial Europe, was built with blood. Not handshakes. Not kindness. Blood. We've killed for borders, for gods, for pride, for nothing. We make heroes out of warriors and legends out of conquerors. Why? Because on some level, we admire violence when it's controlled, when it benefits us. That's who we are. Still think we're naturally peaceful. Then why does peace have to be taught? Why do we spend 12 years in school learning how to play nice, take turns, and not hit? If peace were our default, we wouldn't need to be trained to use it. But violence? That comes naturally. I can already hear the argument. But what about empathy? Sure, we have it. So do wolves. So do lions. But empathy doesn't erase instinct. You can feel bad after the punch, but the punch still came first. Sophia wants to believe in our better angels. I get that. It's a beautiful idea. But here's the problem. Beautiful ideas don't keep you alive. Instinct does. Strength does. And when things break down, when society collapses, when disaster hits, it's not the peaceful ones who survive. It's the ones who are ready to fight. Because beneath the surface of our so-called civilization is something raw, something old, something angry. And it's still there. We are a species born from struggle, hardened by war, and addicted to control. You can dress it up in philosophy, paint it over with politics, or hide it behind kindness. But scratch the surface, and you'll see what we really are. We are not angels who sometimes act like beasts. We are beasts who try, sometimes, to act like angels. And that's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. So, are humans naturally violent? Yes. And the fact that we're still asking the question is just more proof we're afraid of the answer.
Marcus, your words are powerful, but power doesn't make something true. You say we need prisons, armies, and locks, and take that as proof that we're naturally violent. But have you ever thought maybe we built those things not because violence is our nature, but because we fear it? Because we know how badly things can go if we don't protect peace. You talk about babies not being born peaceful because toddlers fight over toys. That's fair. But those same toddlers also hug, smile, and run to comfort each other when someone cries. They don't just grab toys, they give them away. They don't only scream, they reach for their parents when scared. You can't ignore the full picture. Yes. Children can be aggressive, but they're also some of the most naturally kind, forgiving, and curious beings on earth. If we were purely violent, we wouldn't feel guilt. We wouldn't cry when someone else is hurt. We wouldn't have the urge to help, but we do. You said we love war movies and boxing matches. And sure, some people do. But you know what else we love? Happy endings. Weddings. Stories of forgiveness. Videos where strangers help each other. We cry when people reconnect. We cheer when people survive. That isn't proof of violence, that's proof of compassion. Violence might shock us. But peace moves us. You bring up ancient bones in Kenya, and I won't argue that those deaths happened. But let's be real, those were exceptions, not the rule. You found one massacre, not a million. If humans were naturally violent, those skeletons would be the norm, not the shocking discovery. And even scientists who study that site say violence may have been triggered by survival needs, resources, competition, not some deep bloodthirst. Violence, Marcus, is a reaction, not a default. Let's go back to what happens when someone gets hurt. Imagine a car crash. People rush to help. Total strangers. No one pulls out a weapon. No one attacks. They call 911. They stop traffic. They give their jackets. Over and over again, in emergencies, people show not aggression but instinctive compassion. That's nature. You say peace has to be taught. But so does everything else. We teach kids not to bite, yes. But we also teach them math, language, and how to use a fork. No one argues that because we teach reading, humans must be illiterate by nature. That logic doesn't hold. Teaching peace doesn't mean we don't have it inside us. It means we're nurturing what's already there. And let's talk about chimps. And bonobos. You mentioned we're not bonobos singing Kumbaya. Fine. But don't forget, bonobos share just as much of our DNA as chimps do. And they're peaceful. They settle conflicts without fighting. They live in communities where cooperation matters more than dominance. The fact that we're related to both tells us something crucial. Humans have both sides. Yes, we have the capacity for violence, but we also have the capacity for peace. And here's the thing, capacity doesn't equal nature. A knife can be used to kill, but that doesn't make it a weapon by nature. It can also cut bread, save lives in surgery, or carve art. Same with us. Just because we're capable of violence doesn't mean we're defined by it. You say history is full of empires built on blood. And I agree. But it's also full of resistance, healing, and peace movements. For every war, there was a protest. For every dictator, a freedom fighter. For every act of violence, a response that said, this isn't who we want to be. And maybe that's the point. That if humans were truly violent at our core, we wouldn't feel ashamed after hurting others. We wouldn't try to make peace. We wouldn't long for forgiveness. But we do. And that longing isn't weakness, it's truth. It's proof that we are trying, again and again, to return to who we really are and not beasts pretending to be angels. But human beings are trying to become better. You said, violence is the system. I say, violence is the failure of the system. And the fact that we keep trying to fix it, rebuild it, and make it more fair, that says something. You want to call peace the exception? I say peace is the goal we keep returning to. And that matters more than anything.
Sophia, I hear the hope in your words. I really do. But hope isn't evidence. You say if humans were naturally violent, we would have destroyed each other long ago. That's a comforting idea, but it ignores reality. We have been destroying each other, just not all at once. We've done it in waves. Wars, genocides, conquests, one after another, century after century. We survive not because we're peaceful, but because we've gotten really good at managing our violence. We contain it. We redirect it. But it's still there, simmering beneath the surface. You said we rush to help people in car crashes or disasters. And yes, sometimes we do. But let me ask you this. What happens when the food runs out? When there's no law? When is it every man for himself? You don't get kindness. You get chaos. You get looting, panic, beatings, even killings for a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas. That's not fiction. That's what happens every single time a society collapses, even briefly. The moment the rules disappear, the peaceful mask slips, and our true instincts show. You talked about toddlers hugging and being kind. Sure, but you also admitted they hit, bite, and scream to get what they want. That's my point. You don't have to teach a child to be selfish or aggressive. You have to teach them not to be. You say we have empathy in our bones. Maybe. But we also have territorial instinct, jealousy, and rage, and those show up without lessons. And let's talk about bonobos. Yes, they're peaceful, but they're not us. They live in small, stable groups without wars, without borders, without money or politics. Humans are vastly more complex. Comparing us to bonobos ignores what we've actually done as a species. We didn't build skyscrapers and empires with hugs. We did it with force, control, and hierarchy. Chimps and bonobos are part of our story. But if we're honest about our behavior, we look a lot more like the chimps, strategic, aggressive, and ready to fight for dominance. And let's stop pretending empathy is the opposite of violence. They can exist side by side. A soldier can cry over a child and still pull the trigger. A man can love his family and still hit someone in a bar. Our emotions don't cancel out our instincts. They just complicate them. You said peace isn't taught, it's nurtured. But nurturing takes constant work. That's not natural. That's effort. It's like holding back a flood. We're always one disaster away from slipping into violence again. And that tells you something about what's waiting underneath. And yes, we have movements for peace. We have protests, revolutions, and calls for justice. But think about this. Why do those even exist? Because there's so much violence to begin with. You don't need a peace movement in a naturally peaceful world. You need it in a broken one that you say history has resistance and healing. I agree. But it also has crusades, holocausts, ethnic cleansings, and endless wars. And most of those weren't caused by evil monsters. They were caused by ordinary people, convinced they were doing the right thing. That's scarier than anything else, because it means the violence isn't always outside of us, it's inside. And under the right pressure, anyone is capable of it. Sophia, you say that people feel guilty after violence, and that guilt is proof that it goes against our nature. But I say guilt doesn't erase instinct. You can feel bad after doing something, but still do it again. That's what we are. Creatures of conflict, learning to feel bad after the damage is done. You mentioned weddings and stories with happy endings. Sure, we want those. But wanting peace and being peaceful are two very different things. We crave love, yes. But we also crave power. We crave control. We crave revenge when we're hurt. And when peace gets in the way of those cravings, we break it. No, I don't believe humans are monsters. But I do believe we're born with teeth. And from the beginning of time, we've used them. The truth is, humans are not naturally peaceful. We're not born to hold hands. We're born with clenched fists. It's not because we're evil. It's because life is hard, and we evolved to survive it by any means necessary that we can choose peace. We can fight for peace. But that choice, that struggle is the proof that peace isn't our nature, that it's our aspiration, and aspirations don't come easy.